Hey, what's up everybody, Nexel here. Today we're playing Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, and we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake banner that just dropped in Global last week. Now, this banner is a reprint banner, meaning we've gotten these medals before, but this banner is a little bit better than it was before. So let's go ahead and do our regular banner analysis. We'll talk about the medals a little bit, the draw odds, which are actually important for this banner, and finally my thoughts and recommendations on whether or not I think you should be pulling for any of these medals. Now, first things first, with any new banner or avatar board or sale in the Moogle shop, you're going to want to see when it expires. So in this case, you have until July 27th to decide if you want to pull, and that's a lot of time. Remember that a lot of new things can come out, like new medals or new avatar boards, or maybe they'll drop traits in the Moogle shop that you desperately need for a medal you got from the Draw Points banner. So always wait until the last day, see what's available to you, and then decide what you want to spend your jewels on. Remember, jewels are your best asset in this entire game. However, when we look at the banner itself, it's going to be 3,000 jewels per pull, and in terms of what you get from every single pull, you are guaranteed 4 Kingdom Hearts 3 medals, which is 1 more than what we normally see, and these are really good candidates for sub-slots. They're good for draw points because at minimum, Kingdom Hearts 3 medals are tier 7, so you'll be getting 7 points for every single one. If you sell all 4 of them, that's 28 points, which is a pretty good deal. Or you're going to want to keep those Kingdom Hearts 3 medals for a unique ability. So for example, Kingdom Hearts 3 Anti-Aqua still has 100% magic reflection, which is still a really relevant effect for things like PvE or PvP or even Coliseum. So sometimes you want to keep one of those Kingdom Hearts 3 medals for a specific reason. In terms of the rest of the stuff that you get, though, you get no trait medals, which is probably why we got that 4th Kingdom Hearts 3 medal. And then you get 6 5-star or higher medals, which you're generally going to either keep for sub-slots or you're going to sell them for draw points. In terms of the rest of the banner, you get 10 VIP coins with every single pull, which is pretty sweet because it lets you pick which traits to get. Remember that you're guaranteed only one of the 3 within 3 pulls, and the VIP coins are going to help you decide. So for example, if you get Sephiroth, use the VIP coins to get Sephiroth traits, etc, etc. You'll also be getting 3 power gems with every single pull, which again is just the icing on the cake, making sure you get a little bit extra for the jewels that you spent. Remember though that this is a 3 pull mercy, and that's actually really important because you're only spending 9,000 jewels to get one of these medals as opposed to the standard 15,000 jewels to get one medal. Now remember that with every single medal you pull, you likely need to spend an extra 2,000 to 3,000 jewels on trait packs just to make sure you get perfect traits. So even after that, you're still only spending about 12,000 jewels to get a perfectly traded Final Fantasy VII Remake banner medal, as opposed to the standard 15,000 jewels to get a medal, which only gives you the medal and then 5 trait medals. So all in all, this is a really good deal. I'm really a big fan of 3 pull mercies. However, again, this is a mixed mercy banner, meaning that on that 3rd pull, you are not guaranteed which one of the 3 that you want. You'll be getting Cloud or Tifa or Sephiroth. If you want Sephiroth specifically, it's still only a 33% chance with a 66.7% chance of getting either Cloud or Tifa. So if you're looking for one specifically, really weigh out your odds and decide if it's still worth pulling, even if knowing the odds going into it. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the medals themselves. And one thing I'd want to note is that these are all really good staple medals. I still use my Final Fantasy VII Remake Cloud and my Final Fantasy VII Remake Tifa, so they're really good staple medals. But let's go ahead and talk about what makes them not as good today that made them super strong back in the day. So let's go ahead and start with Final Fantasy VII Remake Cloud, who is definitely the worst of the 3 because he is mainly locked to PvE content. His strength stat is now only passable. It's still okay at 45,383. It's not as good as the standard 47,000 that we see or the 49,000 that we've been seeing recently, but it still passes, so it's still just okay. In terms of the multiplier though, it's actually pretty good at the high value of 20.84 and a low value of 18.6. Now that 18.6 doesn't really look attractive, but when we look at his damage plus condition, which is damage plus higher HP, that means as long as your HP is completely full, you're going to be hitting a 20.84 multiplier, which is actually better than the tier 10s that we've gotten recently. So super easy condition to meet for a really decent multiplier. In terms of his special attack, he is a 2-turn buffer. Now, remember that when we look at that power metal strength plus 3,000, that means it's plus 3,000 for the first turn, and then it stacks on the second turn. So by that second turn, you're at plus 6,000. If you have extra attack on Cloud, we're looking at plus 12,000 on that second turn. However, remember that a newer supernova will give you instantaneously plus 6,000 or plus 8,000 for the turn, with extra attack that's either plus 12,000 or plus 16,000 for one turn. So the newer supernovas will just give you more, and it'll give you more quickly. Remember, you run into a lot of content where you don't wait until the second turn. You want that strength buff right now. So the newer supernovas are one-turn buffs, but they give you more of a bang for your buck at the moment, instantaneously, whereas these two-turn buffers, you gotta wait until the second turn to get the maximum benefit. However, his special attack does do self-buffing for upright power, covering you for general strength and defense, general strength and defense, upright strength and defense, and then power strength and defense. So self-buffing special attacks are still really good, even if the strength isn't as high as what we're normally used to seeing. In terms of his effects, he gives count +1, which is pretty good for just managing counts. It's nothing too special, especially on a blue counter enemy where +1 is pretty much nothing, but it's still good making sure you don't hit that counter attack and get slapped by something like poison, paralysis, or sleep, or get knocked out in the middle of your own turn. So count +1, nice little ability to have on a meta like Final Fantasy VII Remake Cloud. In terms of the supernova attack, it does give you perfect buffs for general, upright, and power, however, offers you no debuffs whatsoever. In terms of the supernova attack, it will give power medals plus 6,000, which again will last for 2 turns. Now remember, we see new supernovas that give plus 10,000 or plus 12,000 for 1 turn, and again that can be very, very important because for things like Colosseum or things like PvP, you likely want that strength boost right now. You can't wait until the second turn. So this is a little bit of an outdated effect because it's less than what we like to see, and it just doesn't give you what you need quickly. So personally for me, I would still like to have I would still like to have Strikeform Sora more, just because of better PvP utility, and it's still an easy multiplier to accomplish, even though it has a lower steep end. Strikeform Sora just gives you a lot more utility in terms of covering things like PvP. It's a very easy condition to meet, and it will give you those one-turn buffs, which again are important if you need that strength buff right now. So Final Fantasy VII Remake Cloud, unfortunately the worst of the 3. Moving on to Final Fantasy VII Remake Tifa, she's probably still the most versatile of the 3 because she covers a lot of different areas of the game. So she's still good for PvE and PvP utility. She's still the best upright speed medal, with Kingdom Hearts 3 Sora and Riku being a decent second place in comparison. And in terms of the strength value, same with Cloud, it's not as good as we'd like to see it, but 45,000 is still a really decent strength value to have. In terms of the special attack, keep in mind Tifa is not a 2-turn buffer. She's the only one of these medals that's not a 2-turn buffer, and that makes her inherently weaker because she only gives speed medal strength plus 3,000. That means no matter how many times or how many turns pass, you're only getting plus 3,000 for the turn, plus 6,000 with extra attack. But remember, with Cloud, we said he could hit plus 12,000 on the second turn. Unfortunately, Tifa being a 1-turn buffer will never crack that number without copy medals or Supernova Renew or something crazy to supplement Tifa. In terms of her special attack, though, remember that she is self-buffing, and self-buffing is always a good thing to have on staple medals. In terms of the effect, super easy damage plus condition. Again, going back to Cloud, multiplier, still good. Damage plus condition, higher HP, super easy to meet as long as you have something like a Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A, or an HD Xion, or a Kingdom Hearts 3 Naminé, because those will always bring you up to max HP every single time. In terms of the other effects, though, it's count ±0, which is okay, again, helping for count management, making sure if you go up against a blue counter enemy, you're not decreasing that count. And she also has PvP utility. This is one of the reasons I thought back in the day Tifa was definitely one of the ones you wanted to get, because she still has defense boost Pierce 30% and speed metal reflection plus 15%, which we don't see on a lot of medals. So we've seen it on things like Kingdom Hearts 3 Larxene. I believe we saw it on Kingdom Hearts 3 Vanitas. So it's not on too many medals. So getting that utility on Tifa keeps her viable moving forward into the future. It's still definitely a far cry from being the best, but considering what we have in terms of upright speed, it's still the best we've got, unfortunately. In terms of the Supernova attack, again, it's a 1-turn buff that gives speed medals plus 6,000 for 1 turn, as opposed to the 2 turns again with Cloud, and it rebuffs upright speed buffs. So just like with Cloud, it'll only give you buffs and not give you any debuffs, but that can still be useful based on if you get debuffed by something like a Barrier Master, or you get hit with an interrupt attack like Gula that's going to nerf your strength. However, Tifa also has a nice little thing with her supernova attack where it'll give you gauge healing +3 and count +3. Now, it's always good to have these healing abilities on command. So remember, supernova attacks, you can activate them whenever. So let's just say you're fighting a blue counter enemy, you're about to go into something that does 3 hits like Decidius Sephiroth, and you still can activate Tifa supernova attack. Boom, you activate Tifa supernova attack, gives count +3, and that Sephiroth is good to go for its special attack without activating the counter attack. So having that healing, having that count increase when you want it is very, very good for just figuring out the placements and getting some utility out of a medal. Now let's go ahead and talk about the last medal in the banner, Final Fantasy VII Remake Sephiroth, who is probably still the most used because he hasn't been completely outclassed in terms of damage yet. So just like with Cloud, his power medal strength increase and his base strength are on or below average. He has a solid multiplier that can definitely compete with some of the newer medals, being at the minimum 20 and at the most, when you only have a 1 enemy left or no parts left, a 21.14, which is actually higher than Kiar 24, Master Xehanort, or Xemnas B, which is actually really good and one of the things that keeps Sephiroth viable. He does a 1-hit attack, which is really good for anything that requires speed. So for example, raiding or doing timed missions, in those cases, you want special attacks that activate instantaneously. You don't have to watch a lot of animation, and Sephiroth is very bare bones, just doing a single hit. Now, one really good thing about Sephiroth is that both his special attack and his supernova attack are self-buffing, and that's very, very crucial. So having a special attack that self-buffs makes sure whenever you get to the medal, it's taking care of itself. So let's just say we go into Sephiroth, we have perfect general strength, we have perfect power strength, but we're missing the reverse. Sephiroth is going to fill that up with his special attack. So it's always good to have self-buffing on the special attack. It's actually even greater, or at least fantastic, to have it on the supernova attack. So remember, the supernova attack is an attack you set off on command. So let's just say you're fighting something like a barrier master, you bring down its counter or you knock it out. That barrier master takes away all of your buffs and potentially restores the enemy's defense so that it's back to 0. If you activate the Final Fantasy VII Remake Sephiroth Supernova, then boom, you are back to all the buffs you need, giving yourself +15 general, +15 reverse, and +15 power. And then you also give the enemy -15 general, -15 reverse, and -15 power. So having a supernova attack that's self-buffing can be really good when it comes to content where you lose your buff somewhere in the middle. So for, again, things like barrier masters or things with interrupt attacks like Gula from the Keyblade War. So it's really, really good for Sephiroth to still have that effect. However, all in all, Sephiroth is still just a high damage output medal with self-buffing utility for reverse power. So as long as they don't release a new medal, because the new medals lately haven't had a lot of effects, so as long as they don't release a new reverse power medal that has self-buffing, this Sephiroth is probably going to be a good investment for the future. Now, while we don't talk about it often, something important to note with any Mixed Mercy banner is going to be the draw odds. So remember, with Mixed Mercy banners, you still only have a chance at getting one medal that you want. So for example, if we look at this banner and let's say I want Sephiroth, I still only have a 33.3% chance to get him as my stopper medal. However, because there's 3 featured medals, all of them get thrown into the pool, which is nice because it increases your chance of getting one of them early. So if we look at our draw odds and hit the general tab, remember that the general medals are going to be the 6 5-star or higher medals that you can get. You have a chance at getting Cloud, Sephiroth, or Tifa, and the odds of getting one of them is the same as any other medal in the general medals tab. If we look at the guarantee A, which represents the 3 Kingdom Hearts 3 medals, again, you see Cloud, Sephiroth, and Tifa, and their odds are no more or no less than any other medal that you can get. So remember that the more featured medals that a banner has, the higher your chance of getting one of those featured medals before the actual Mercy. So I already cranked out the math for you. In terms of the 6 5-star or higher medals you can get, per poll, you have a 2.9% chance of getting one of these 3 medals. In terms of the Kingdom Hearts 3 medals, you actually have a 2.54% chance of getting, again, one of these 3 medals early. Now, you have to put those both together, and when you do that, you actually have a 5.37% chance of getting one of these medals per poll. So that means 1 every 20 people is just going to get a random Final Fantasy VII Remake medal just from a non-Mercy. So let's say you do the Mercy. Let's say you do 3 polls. That actually bumps you up to a 14.26% chance of getting one of these early. And that's actually pretty good. That's more than 1 every 10 people is going to be getting an additional Final Fantasy VII Remake medal before the Mercy or on the Mercy itself. So remember, the more medals that are featured in a Mixed Mercy, the higher your chances of getting one of them earlier than the actual stopper. So in terms of my thoughts and recommendations on this banner, it's honestly not a bad banner for pretty much almost anyone. All of these medals are pretty decent staples. Tifa is still the best upright speed medal, Cloud is an okay medal, I still prefer Strikeform Sora over Cloud truthfully, and Sephiroth is still one of the best reverse power medals, still having a fantastic multiplier, a supernova attack that self-buffs, and a special attack that self-buffs. So all three of these medals are pretty decent, especially for their attributes. In terms of the cost, it's only 9,000 jewels to get one, plus an additional 2,000 to 3,000 jewels just to get perfect traits, and that's still less than the amount of jewels you'll spend to do a 5-pull Mercy, which only gets you the medal. So you still save a lot of jewels by doing the Mixed Mercy Final Fantasy VII Remake banner. However, remember, if you want one specific medal, make sure to calculate your odds before pulling. Know what your odds are, and then spend jewels based on what you know. So for example, I'm only missing Sephiroth. I already have a Cloud, I already have a Tifa. That means if I want Sephiroth, I have to accept that the stopper medal chance is only 33.3% chance. I have to accept that there's still a higher chance that I'll get either Cloud or Tifa. So if you're looking for one specifically, remember, it's a Mixed Mercy. You're not guaranteed that one even after pulling all 3 pulls. So who do I think should pull? If you're lacking in upright speed, upright power, or upright reverse, this is the fantastic banner for you, because that means no matter what you pull, you're gonna make good use of it for a lower cost than normal. Sure, the damage output is a little bit lower than today's standard, but the medals are easy to play around with because of their self-buffing capacity. So you could throw, for example, let's just say you are using, just for example, like Counterpoint, you have all these magic medals, and then you throw Cloud in the pet slot. Remember, Cloud's self-buffing. Sephiroth, self-buffing, Tifa, self-buffing. So even if you throw them in a place where they get no buffs beforehand, they are good to go. They will take care of themselves. And we don't know if we'll get another chance at these Final Fantasy VII Remake medals. So I know one thing that made these really attractive is that it's a collab medal. And people love collaborations. It's so awesome to see these medals. We don't know if this banner is going to come back. So if you want one of these medals just for collector purposes, now is a good time to get them, just because, again, it's a cheap banner. It's very cheap to make them, perfectly traded, and they're all really good as staples for their attribute. So truthfully, it's the cost that makes this a really good banner, but remember that your jewels are infinitely valuable. If you don't need to spend them unnecessarily, don't. If you're covered in terms of upright power, upright speed, and reverse power, then you probably don't need to pull from this unless you just really want to, because again, it's a Final Fantasy VII Remake banner. Pretty sweet stuff. But with that being said, that's the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer when I have the time. If you'd like to join my Discord, get some off-hours help, and just chat with the Twilight Knights, the link is right underneath the screen there. Just type it into your URL, and you are good to go. But that's all for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time, take it easy.